My wife faked a terminal illness to spend my savings on her secret wedding. It's the kind of thing you read about, a headline you skim past, thinking it's some made-up sensationalism. But it happened. To me. And honestly, the shock hasn't even fully worn off. It's more like a dull, throbbing ache that's settling in, making every breath feel heavy. If you're finding yourself nodding along, maybe even recognizing a bit of your own story in here, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this, and definitely leave a comment below with your thoughts. Sharing this helps more people find these stories, and your comments, well, they make me feel a little less alone in this mess. So yeah, hit those buttons. Thanks. My name, for the record, is Mark. I'm 42. Lived in the same stretch of suburban Ohio my whole life. A decent house my parents left me, a yard that always needed mowing, the whole American dream package, or what I thought was the dream anyway. I met Sarah at a local brewery trivia night. She was sharp, funny, a little bit feisty, and she had this way of looking at you like she saw right through whatever BS you were trying to peddle. We clicked instantly. We were married within a year. 7 years of solid, good living. Or so I thought. We built a life. Mortgage, 2 cars in the driveway, a dog named Buster, who's probably more loyal than I ever gave him credit for. We had our routines. Sunday brunch, movie nights on the couch, arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash that always ended with a shared laugh. Sarah was everything I'd ever wanted. Confident, ambitious, beautiful. She worked in marketing, climbing the ladder, always had a project, always had a plan. I'm an accountant, predictable, steady. I liked that about myself, I think. It felt like a solid foundation for our life. She was the spark, I was the bedrock. Or that's how it felt. The first tremor, looking back, was small, almost imperceptible. She started getting really tired. Not just long day at work tired, but bone-deep exhaustion. She'd come home and practically collapse on the sofa. I'd bring her dinner, rub her feet, tell her to rest. I figured it was stress. Her job was demanding. Then came the headaches, persistent, blinding headaches that even the strongest painkillers couldn't touch. She started seeing doctors, specialists. The initial tests were inconclusive. More tests, more waiting. I was right there with her, holding her hand, trying to be strong for both of us. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. Every time her phone rang, my heart would leap into my throat. I started picking up more slack at home, making sure she ate, making sure she slept. I'd tell her not to worry about work, just focus on getting better. She'd smile, a weak, fragile smile, and squeeze my hand. "You're my rock, Mark," she'd whisper. And I believed it. I was her rock. I was the guy who would do anything for her. Then came the diagnosis.
It was a Tuesday. The sky outside was that dull, overcast gray that Ohio gets so much of in the late fall. We were in the doctor's office, Dr. Evans. He was usually so jovial, but today his face was grim. He sat across from us, his hands clasped on his desk, and he delivered the words that would shatter my world. Stage 4 glioblastoma. Brain cancer. Aggressive. Terminal. He talked about treatment options, about palliative care, about time. He said maybe 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. Sarah just stared ahead, her face ashen. I remember reaching for her hand, my own trembling. I felt like I was drowning. My rock, my everything, was being ripped away from me. The next few weeks were a blur of fear, grief, and doctor's appointments. Sarah seemed to handle it with a strange kind of calm. She'd cry sometimes, of course, but it wasn't the raw, gut-wrenching despair I was feeling. It was more resigned. She started talking about her bucket list, things she wanted to do, places she wanted to see. I wanted to give her everything. I told her we'd do it all. We'd make every last moment count. We looked into hospice care, discussed wills, the practical, awful details of dying. And then she started talking about our finances. She said she wanted to make sure everything was taken care of, that I wouldn't be burdened. She wanted to set up some kind of trust for me, for our future, even though there wasn't going to be one. I told her not to worry about that, just to focus on living, but she insisted. She said she'd been doing some research, looking into financial advisors, and that she had a plan, a good plan. I trusted her. She was always the organized one, the planner. She started asking me about my retirement accounts, our joint savings, the life insurance policies. She said she wanted to consolidate things, make it easier for me to manage later. She was so calm, so methodical about it. It was almost unsettling, but I chalked it up to her pragmatic nature, the way she compartmentalized things. She was facing death, and she was still trying to take care of me. It made me love her even more, this fiercely independent woman who, even in her final days, was putting me first. She'd sit at the laptop for hours, handling things, as she put it. She'd ask me to sign papers, authorization forms. I signed them without question. My mind was a fog of worry about her, about the future we wouldn't have. I was so consumed by her supposed illness that I barely registered the numbers flying around, the transfers happening. She explained it all away as necessary steps, preparing for the inevitable. She even started talking about a trip, a final, beautiful trip for us, somewhere warm, before she got too weak. I was so grateful for her spirit, for her desire to still find joy. She picked a place, a small, secluded villa in Tuscany. It sounded perfect, romantic, peaceful. She said she wanted to go in the spring, when everything was blooming.
She spent weeks planning it, sending me links to photos, talking about the food, the wine. I was so focused on her comfort, on making her last months beautiful, that I didn't question the expense. It was a lot of money, I knew that. We'd saved for years, and I'd also put in a good chunk from my parents' inheritance. Sarah said, "We've earned this, Mark. We deserve this last hurrah." And who was I to argue? Her dying wish. I'd sell the house, I'd work until I dropped if it meant she could have one perfect final escape. The details of the trip started to become a bit fuzzy for me. She was handling all the bookings, the flights, the accommodations. She'd show me brochures, talk about the itinerary, but honestly, my focus was on her. Was she eating? Was she in pain? Was she sleeping? I'd come home from work and she'd be on the phone, talking in hushed tones, sometimes in the other room. She'd emerge with a bright smile, saying she was just sorting out travel insurance or some tedious detail. She even mentioned needing to access some of our emergency funds, a separate account I kept for unforeseen circumstances. She said the travel agent had suggested it for a contingency, a deposit on the villa. I hesitated for a second. That account was usually off limits. But then I saw the look in her eyes, that familiar sparkle of determination mixed with vulnerability. "It's just a precaution, Mark," she'd said. "We need to be prepared for anything." And I agreed. Of course I agreed. Anything for Sarah. She started talking about needing special equipment, a portable oxygen concentrator, a specialized wheelchair. She said the Tuscan villa didn't have all the amenities for someone with her condition, and she wanted to be as comfortable as possible. Again, I didn't question the expense. I was a husband, a caregiver, and soon, I suspected, a widower. My savings, our future, it all felt secondary to her immediate well-being. She even mentioned needing to pay for a private nurse to accompany us, someone experienced with palliative care. She said the travel agent had found a wonderful woman who could help manage her pain medication and keep her comfortable throughout the journey. The cost was astronomical. I remember feeling a sickening lurch in my stomach as she read me the figures, but then she looked at me, her eyes so full of pleading, and said, "Please, Mark, I'm so scared of being alone and in pain. I just need to know I'll have someone there." I couldn't say no. I wired the money. It was almost all of it. Everything we had. Then came the news that she was getting weaker, too weak to travel. The doctor had advised against it. She seemed devastated. She cried for hours, inconsolable. She said all her plans, all her hopes for a beautiful final trip were gone. I held her, trying to comfort her, my own heart breaking. I suggested we could do something local, something simple. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She said she just wanted to be home, surrounded by familiar things. That's when the suspicion, the tiny, insidious seed of doubt, began to sprout. It was the way she said it, the almost performative sadness. It felt off. But I pushed it down. How could I even think such a thing? She was dying. She was my wife. One evening, I came home early. Buster, usually glued to Sarah's side,
was waiting by the back door, whining. The house was unusually quiet. I called out for Sarah. No answer. I walked into our bedroom. The closet door was slightly ajar. I don't know why I looked. It was just a nagging feeling, a disturbance in the otherwise placid surface of our dying days. Inside, tucked away in a corner, was a suitcase. A bright, cheerful yellow suitcase I'd never seen before. Curiosity and a growing unease propelled me to open it. It was packed with clothes, not the frail, comfortable things Sarah had been wearing lately, but vibrant, stylish outfits, swimsuits, sunscreen, a large, elegant straw hat. And then I saw it, a plane ticket, a round-trip ticket to Cancun, departing that very morning, for one person, my wife. My blood ran cold. Cancun? Sunscreen? She was supposed to be too weak to travel to Tuscany. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the image of my dying wife with the contents of this suitcase. I stumbled out of the bedroom, my hands shaking. I found my phone, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I went to the shared cloud storage where Sarah kept all our financial documents, her organized system. I started looking for transactions related to Tuscany. Nothing. No bookings, no deposits, no flights. But then I found it. A series of wire transfers. Large sums, all going to a different account, an account I didn't recognize. The dates of these transfers corresponded with when she'd been asking me to access our emergency funds and our joint savings. My savings. The room started to spin. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. Glioblastoma, 6 months, palliative care. It was all a lie, a meticulously crafted, devastating lie. But why? Why would she do this? And then I saw it. Buried deep in the account statements, a single recurring payment, small at first, then growing, to a wedding venue. A wedding venue in Las Vegas, a significant deposit. And then, just last month, the final payment. The date of the final payment was 2 weeks ago, the day after she told me she was too weak to travel to Tuscany. She had a secret wedding. My wife, who was supposedly dying in my arms, had been planning a wedding, and she'd used our savings, my life savings, to do it. The sheer, audacious betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I sank to my knees, the floor cold beneath my trembling hands. Buster whined at my feet, sensing my distress. And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet normalcy of our home, I felt a chasm open up beneath me, a darkness I never knew existed. She wasn't dying. She was getting married. To whom?
And what was I going to do now? The unanswered questions clawed at my throat, and the silence of the house screamed louder than any argument we'd ever had. My breath hitched, a ragged sound in the suffocating quiet. My wife, Sarah, faking her own death to marry someone else. The words themselves felt absurd, too outlandish for the life we'd built, the vows we'd exchanged, the shared sunsets we'd watched from our back porch. It was a script from a bad daytime soap opera, not the reality of my existence. I stood there, frozen, the yellow suitcase a grotesque clown shoe in the corner of my vision, the laptop screen a beacon of my own destruction. The lump in my throat swelled, choking back a scream that was building, a raw, primal sound that threatened to shatter the veneer of my sanity. This wasn't grief. This was something far uglier. This was a violation. My fingers fumbled for my phone again, my gaze scanning the screen with a desperation that bordered on madness. I scrolled back, digging through emails, looking for any clue, any breadcrumb that might explain this impossible scenario. Nothing. She was a phantom, a ghost in my life, and I hadn't even known it. The money. That was the only tangible evidence. The wire transfers, the depleted savings accounts, the emergency fund bled dry. For what? A wedding. A brand new, shiny, illegal wedding. Who? Who was this person who had stolen my wife, my money, my entire future? Was it someone I knew? Someone I'd seen at parties, at work? Someone who had smiled and shaken my hand while my wife was plotting this elaborate, agonizing deception? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. The sheer audacity, the cold, calculated cruelty of it all was staggering. She had looked me in the eye, let me hold her, let me whisper assurances of love and unwavering support, all while she was orchestrating this betrayal. She had let me believe she was dying,
slowly and painfully, and I had poured every ounce of my emotional and financial resources into her supposed comfort, her supposed last wishes. My mind reeled, trying to piece together the timeline, the terminal diagnosis, the bucket list, the trip to Tuscany. Each one a carefully constructed lie, a stepping stone on her path to this Vegas wedding. When had it started? How long had she been planning this? Had she met this person before, during, or after the supposed diagnosis? The questions swirled, each one a sharp shard of glass lodging itself deeper into my chest. I remembered her doctor's appointments, the hushed phone calls, the hours spent on the laptop. I thought it was her managing her illness, her final affairs. It was her managing her elopement. I stumbled into the living room, my legs feeling like lead. Buster nudged my hand with his nose, a low whine in his throat. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes, a silent question hanging in the air. He knew something was wrong. He always did.
I knelt down, burying my face in his fur, the familiar scent of him a small anchor in the storm. "What do I do, boy?" I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "What do I do?" He just licked my face, his tail giving a tentative wag, a desperate attempt to offer comfort. I needed to talk to someone, but who? My parents were gone. My sister lived in California, and while we were close, this was too raw, too unbelievable to articulate. My friends. Dave. We'd been friends since high school. We played poker every other Friday. He'd known Sarah since the trivia night. He'd seen us, celebrated our anniversaries with us. Could I tell Dave? Would he even believe me? Or would he think I'd finally lost my mind, consumed by the grief of a dying wife? I needed proof, concrete, undeniable proof. The money was gone. The plane ticket to Cancun was for her alone. What about this wedding? Vegas. She'd paid for it. There had to be records, receipts, contracts. I knew her. She was meticulous. Even in her deception, she'd be organized. The laptop. I needed to get back to the laptop. I walked back into our bedroom, Buster following at my heels. The yellow suitcase was still there, a garish monument to her duplicity. I ignored it, my eyes fixed on the laptop, now closed, innocent and unassuming on the desk. I sat down, my hands shaking as I powered it on. The screen glowed to life, displaying our familiar desktop wallpaper, a photo of Sarah and me, grinning on a beach vacation a few years ago. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. I logged back into the cloud storage. I navigated through the folders, my heart hammering against my ribs with every click. Financials, budgets, savings, and then a folder I hadn't noticed before, titled simply, Vegas. My breath hitched again. This was it. This had to be it. I clicked it open. Inside, a whirlwind of documents. A reservation for the Chapel of Eternal Love, a confirmation for a photographer, a receipt for a bouquet of white roses, and then the pièce de résistance, a scanned copy of a marriage license, dated 2 weeks ago, the same day she told me she was too weak to travel, the same day she'd said all her hopes were gone. The license listed her name, Sarah Jenkins, and a groom's name, Daniel Thompson. Daniel Thompson. The name meant absolutely nothing to me. Who the hell was Daniel Thompson? Was he a stranger she'd met online? A lover she'd kept hidden for years? The rage, a simmering inferno that had been building since I'd seen that suitcase, now erupted. It was a hot, blinding fury that consumed me, making my vision blur. Daniel Thompson. He was the reason. He was the reason my wife was alive and well, marrying him while I grieved her supposed death. He was the reason our life, our savings, our future had been pilfered and spent on a sham wedding. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the empty room. Buster jumped, startled, and retreated to the doorway. I couldn't breathe. I felt trapped, suffocated by the walls of our home, by the ghost of the woman I thought I knew. I needed out. I needed air. I needed to escape this suffocating reality. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. "Come on, boy," I said to Buster, my voice hoarse. He trotted over, his tail giving a hopeful thump. I opened the back door, and he jumped into the passenger seat of my truck, settling down as if we were going for a routine drive. Routine. Nothing about this was routine. I drove without a destination, the Ohio highways a blur of streetlights and passing cars. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of anger, confusion, and profound sadness. Daniel Thompson. I repeated the name over and over in my head, trying to conjure an image, a face, a connection. Nothing. He was a phantom, just like Sarah had become. Where was she now? Was she on her honeymoon with Daniel Thompson, basking in the glow of their deceitful union? Was she spending my money on designer clothes and fancy dinners? The thought twisted the knife deeper. My hard-earned money, the money I'd worked years for, the money from my parents' inheritance, all gone, siphoned off for her selfish, twisted desires. I pulled over at a deserted rest stop, the only sound the hum of the wind and the distant drone of traffic. I got out of the truck, leaving Buster in the passenger seat. The cold night air did little to cool the fire raging inside me. I leaned against the truck, staring up at the starless sky, feeling utterly alone. I thought about the moments, the quiet evenings, the shared laughter, the comfort of her presence. Had it all been an act? Had she been acting all along? The way she'd played the frail, dying woman, so vulnerable, so dependent. It was a masterful performance. I, the loving, devoted husband, completely and utterly duped. The weight of it, the sheer magnitude of the deception, threatened to crush me. I remembered her telling me about her plans for the Tuscan villa, the romantic dinners, the sunsets. She described it in such vivid detail, painting a picture of a final, beautiful escape for us. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed fantasy designed to lull me into a false sense of security, to ensure I wouldn't question the massive financial withdrawals. She hadn't been planning a final escape for us. She'd been planning her escape from me. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over Sarah's contact. What would I say? Hey, honey, just checking in. Hope you're enjoying your new life with Daniel Thompson. By the way, I found out you faked your death and married him. Surprise. The absurdity of it all was almost comical, if it wasn't so devastating. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Dave's name, my poker buddy, my confidant. I hesitated. Could I really do this? Could I lay bare the wreckage of my life to another person? But I couldn't keep this inside. The isolation was already a heavy burden.
I took a deep breath and hit the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Just as I was about to hang up, Dave's voice, gruff and sleepy, answered. Mark? Dude, it's, what, midnight? Everything okay? Dave, I started, my voice cracking. I need to see you. Now. There was a pause. Whoa, man, what's going on? You sound off. I am off, Dave. I'm really, really off. It's about Sarah. Another, longer pause. Sarah? What about Sarah? Is she worse? The question hung in the air, a brutal reminder of the lie I'd been living. No, Dave, I said, the words tasting like ash. She's not worse. She's alive, and she's married to someone else. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear Dave's mind reeling, trying to process the impossible information. Finally, he spoke, his voice laced with disbelief and concern. Married? Mark, what are you talking about? Sarah's dying. You said... I know what I said, Dave, I interrupted, the anger returning, sharper now. But it was all a lie. She faked it. The cancer, everything. She's alive, and she married a guy named Daniel Thompson 2 weeks ago. She used all our money to do it. I could hear Dave's sharp intake of breath. No way. Mark, that's insane. Are you sure? I've seen the proof, Dave, I said, my voice trembling. The marriage license, the bank statements, the Vegas bookings, it's all there. She planned it all, while I was here thinking I was saying goodbye to my wife. My God, Mark, Dave whispered. I don't know what to say. This
I can't even imagine." "I can't either," I admitted, a hollow laugh escaping me. "But I need you, Dave. I need you to come. I need you to see this. I can't go through this alone." "Where are you?" he asked, his voice now firm, determined. I told him the rest stop, my voice barely above a whisper. "Stay put, man," he said. "I'll be there as fast as I can. Don't do anything crazy, okay?" "Crazy?" I scoffed, looking at the dark highway stretching out before me. "I think crazy left the building about 2 weeks ago, Dave." I hung up, the phone feeling heavy in my hand. I got back into the truck, Buster stirring restlessly. I looked at him, his innocent eyes filled with an unspoken trust. He deserved better than this. We both did. But what did better even look like now? How do you pick up the pieces of a life that was never what you thought it was? I leaned my head back against the headrest, closing my eyes. The image of Sarah, laughing, vibrant, alive, flashed behind my eyelids. And then, superimposed over it, the image of her, frail and pale, telling me about her terminal diagnosis. The two images warred, each one tearing me apart. I didn't know who she was anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I'd planned a future with, the woman who was supposed to be my rock. She was gone.
Replaced by a stranger, a con artist who had played me for a fool, who had stolen my heart and my savings. And the worst part? The absolute, soul-crushing worst part? I still loved her. Somewhere, buried deep beneath the rage and the betrayal, a tiny, pathetic ember of love still flickered. It was a love for the woman I thought she was, the woman I'd built my life around. And that love, that pathetic, irrational love, was almost the most painful thing of all. It was a constant reminder of how thoroughly I had been deceived, how completely I had fallen for her lies. I heard the distant wail of sirens. They were getting closer. My blood ran cold. What if they were for me? What if my erratic driving, my distraught state had attracted attention? I hadn't broken any laws, had I? I hadn't hurt anyone. But then I remembered the money, the sheer amount of it, and the legality of it all. She had essentially stolen my entire life's savings. The sirens grew louder, their red and blue lights flashing against the dark sky, a stark contrast to the stillness of the rest stop. They were heading towards me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this it? Was this how it ended? Accused of something I didn't do? Caught in the fallout of a deception I never saw coming? I saw the flashing lights pulling into the rest stop, bathing my truck in an eerie glow. My mind raced. I hadn't done anything wrong, but the panic was building, a suffocating wave. And then, through the blinding lights, I saw a familiar figure emerge from another vehicle, hurrying towards mine. Dave. He looked just as confused as I felt, his eyes wide with concern. But as he approached, he pointed, his finger trembling, not at me, but past me, towards the main road. My gaze followed his, and that's when I saw it. Or rather, them. Two figures, silhouetted against the headlights of a passing car, walking hand in hand away from the rest stop, heading into the darkness. One of them was wearing a bright yellow suitcase, and the other was wearing a white wedding veil. My blood turned to ice. Sarah and Daniel Thompson. They weren't just married, they were leaving, right now. Disappearing into the night, just like my life had. I sat there, frozen, watching them go. My breath caught in my throat, a strangled sob escaping my lips. They were getting away with it, with everything. And I was left behind, shattered, with nothing but questions and the fading taillights of their escape. The headlights cut through the darkness, blinding, disorienting. I squinted, trying to make out the figures, but the glare was too intense. They were walking away from us, away from the rest stop, away from everything. Sarah. And him. Daniel Thompson. My wife, dressed in white, walking away with the man she'd married 2 weeks ago, the man she'd spent my money on, the man she'd lied to me with. She was alive.
She was healthy. And she was gone. Dave was beside my truck now, his face a mask of shock and horror.
"Mark, is that—" he started, his voice barely a whisper. I couldn't answer. My throat was choked with a grief so profound it felt like physical pain. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the finality of it. The confirmation that everything I thought I knew, everything I'd loved, was a carefully constructed lie. The woman I'd shared my bed with, my dreams with, my deepest fears with, she was a stranger. And she was walking away from me, from our life, from the man who had loved her unconditionally, into the embrace of another. The figures receded into the night, swallowed by the shadows. The flashing lights of the police cars, which had initially sent a jolt of fear through me, now seemed like a cruel joke. They were here for something else, something unrelated to my shattered reality. They were chasing shadows, while the real monsters, my wife and her new husband, were disappearing into the night, unmarked, unburdened, free. A guttural sound tore from my chest, a sound of pure, unadulterated anguish. It wasn't a cry of rage, not yet. It was a lament for a love lost, a future stolen, a life reduced to rubble. Buster whined softly from the passenger seat, sensing my distress, nudging my hand with his wet nose. I turned to him, my vision blurred with tears, and buried my face in his soft fur. "It's okay, boy," I choked out, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "We'll be okay." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. How could we be okay when our world had imploded? Dave put a hand on my shoulder, his touch gentle, steady. What do we do now, Mark?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. I pulled away, needing space, needing to think, needing to breathe. I looked at the yellow suitcase, still sitting there, mocking me with its absurdity. It was a symbol of her departure, her escape, her new life. And the wedding veil. My God, the veil. It was the most audacious, the most cruel, the most heartless symbol of her betrayal. "We don't do anything, Dave," I said, my voice hollow. "She's gone. She chose him. She chose this. And there's nothing I can do to change that." The words felt like stones in my mouth. The fight had gone out of me. The rage, the confusion, the desperation, they had all been replaced by an overwhelming, crushing emptiness. I got back into my truck, Buster hopping into his usual spot. The police cars were still there, their lights strobing, casting an eerie glow on the scene. I ignored them, my gaze fixed on the spot where Sarah and Daniel had disappeared. They were a mirage, a cruel trick of the light, a manifestation of my deepest fears. But they were real. They were undeniably real. I started the engine, the low rumble of familiar comfort. Dave watched me, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and helplessness. "You're not driving anywhere, man," he said, his voice firm. "Not like this." "I have to, Dave," I replied, my voice laced with a weariness that went bone deep. "I can't stay here." I can't look at that suitcase one more second." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, a grim understanding in his eyes. "Okay, but you're not alone. I'm coming with you." He opened the passenger door and slid in beside me. We drove in silence for a long time, the Ohio landscape blurring past. Buster, sensing the shift in atmosphere, lay his head on my lap, a silent, furry anchor. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. Sarah, walking away, the veil shimmering in the headlights, her hand in Daniel Thompson's. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? What could he offer her that I couldn't? The questions gnawed at me, but I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never get an answer. We drove until the city lights began to appear on the horizon. I headed towards my apartment, the place that had once been our shared sanctuary, now a hollow shell, a monument to a love that never was. Dave remained silent, his presence a quiet comfort, a reminder that I wasn't completely alone in this desolate landscape of my life. As we pulled up to the curb, the familiar brown brick building loomed, an unwelcome silhouette against the night sky. I killed the engine, the silence that descended almost deafening. Buster stirred, looking up at me with an expectant gaze. "Home, boy," I murmured, the word feeling alien on my tongue. We walked up the steps, the key turning in the lock with a hollow click. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it. The couch, the kitchen, the bedroom, all of it held the ghosts of our shared life, now tainted by her deception. I walked into the living room, Buster following, and collapsed onto the sofa, the worn fabric a familiar embrace. Dave sat beside me, his arm resting on my shoulder. "What do you want me to do, Mark?" he asked, his voice gentle. I looked at him, my eyes burning. "I don't know, Dave. I honestly don't know." We can call the police," he suggested, tentatively. "Report the fraud, the money?" I shook my head. What would I say? My wife faked her death, married another man, and stole our savings? They'd laugh me out of the station. And even if they believed me, what then? She's legally married. She's free. And the money? It's gone. Spent on her new life. The injustice of it all was a raw wound. She had stolen my entire future, my financial security, my peace of mind, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was like being held captive by a phantom, a ghost who had vanished, leaving behind only wreckage. I need to get rid of her stuff," I said, the words tumbling out of me. "Her clothes, her pictures, everything." Dave nodded. "I'll help you. We'll do it together." And so we did. We went through her closets, her drawers, her boxes, pulling out every item that belonged to Sarah. It was a surreal, agonizing process. Each piece of clothing, each photograph, each trinket was a shard of glass, cutting me with memories of a past that now felt like a lie.
We bagged it all, creating towering piles of her belongings that seemed to fill the entire apartment. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the blinds, casting a pale, gray light on the scene, I found myself standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by the detritus of our shattered life. Dave watched me, his own exhaustion etched on his face. "You okay, man?" he asked. I looked at him, then around the room, at the bags piled high. "No, Dave," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not okay. I don't think I'll ever be okay again." He sat down on the floor, leaning against the sofa. "What about Buster?" he asked, nodding towards the dog who was now asleep at my feet. "He stays," I said immediately. "He's the only one left." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the unspoken settling upon us. The sun was fully up now, painting the room in hues of orange and gold, a stark contrast to the darkness that still clung to my soul. "I need to go, Mark," Dave finally said, his voice heavy. "But I'm here. If you need anything at all, just call." I nodded, unable to speak. He stood up, and I walked him to the door. As he left, he gave me a firm clap on the back. "Hang in there, man," he said. "You'll get through this." I closed the door behind him, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden stillness. I was alone again, truly alone, with Buster, my silent companion, and a mountain of Sarah's belongings. I looked at the bags, at the sheer volume of her presence that I had to somehow erase. I walked over to the window and pulled back the blinds. The city was waking up, a symphony of car horns and distant sirens. People were going about their lives, oblivious to the devastation that had shattered mine. They were moving forward, while I was stuck, frozen in time, trapped in the wreckage of her betrayal. The anger, which had been a dull ache for hours, now flared anew. It was a righteous anger, a fury born of deep hurt and profound injustice. She had taken everything, and I had nothing left but the ashes of our life together. But even in my despair, a flicker of something else emerged. Not hope, not yet, but a grim determination, a resolve to survive this, to rebuild, brick by painstaking brick, a life that was truly my own. I looked down at Buster, who had woken up and was looking at me expectantly. I knelt down and scratched him behind the ears.
"We'll be okay, boy," I whispered again, this time with a little more conviction. "We'll be okay." I stood up, my gaze falling on the yellow suitcase. It was still there, a bizarre monument to her escape. I walked over to it, my movements deliberate, and grabbed it by the handle. It was lighter than I expected. I walked to the front door, opened it, and with a deep, ragged breath, I carried it out, down the stairs, and out into the bright, unforgiving light of day. I wasn't going to just throw it away. I was going to take it somewhere. Somewhere far, far away.
Somewhere she would never find it. Somewhere it would serve as a reminder, not of her betrayal, but of my own resilience, my own ability to walk away from the wreckage and keep walking. The street was quiet, the morning sun warm on my face. I didn't know where I was going or what I would do, but I knew one thing. I was leaving, and I was never looking back.